So when it comes to horror movies, there are two sides of me basically. The one side being these movies are boring. Okay, they have way too much conversation. The characters develop, and you still don't care about any of them, right? It'll usually be a family or friends or something, and you just don't care about any of these characters. It's most horror movies' common mistake. Like whatever horror movie you can think of, you really don't care about the characters, right? So that's one side of me where I find it being super boring. And then there's the other side of me where it's actually scary, right? Like I watch it like not expecting it to be scary, but it ends up becoming really scary, and the next thing I know, I can't even get out of my house to throw the trash, right? It's that scary. Like you don't want to be alone anymore. Some movies really have the potential to do that, especially when you're young. All right, I remember watching the first Conjuring movie when I was in like my boys' hostel, right? It was nighttime, we all turned off the lights and we watched it, right? So I was like, I'm watching it with all my friends, right? How bad can this be? But I was like 13, 14 at the time, and I watched the movie and it was scary, okay? It scared me to death. I couldn't sleep that night. I literally remember while I was sleeping, all right, I sort of opened my eyes and I literally imagined a scary ghost on top of on the ceiling. Like it was just my brain playing games with me. That's how scared I was watching the first Conjuring. And there are very few movies that can do that to me, at least. All right, most movies I watch, they're super boring. And in today's age, I feel like the scares don't really work anymore, right? There's only a few amounts of moments that will scare you, and doing that on repeat will stop scaring you, right? Jump scares used to be like a big scary factor back in the day. Now it doesn't bother you anymore. So that's why I don't watch horror movies usually. I don't want to bore myself for hours and hours just for a few jump scares. But there are certain movies that are interesting and worth watching, right? It's not all horror movies are bad, but it's like 90% of horror movies are bad, and there's 5% of horror movies that are actually done right? There are two types of horror movies. Like there's I'm not talking about monster movies in general, right? Like you have Chucky, or you have your other movies such as Aliens, or anything that has something to do with a supernatural monster. That's considered to be a monster movie. That does not classify as a horror movie, no matter how much jump scares they try to put in there. That's a monster movie. By horror, I mean actual, like religious, spiritual ghosts, actual ghosts. So when you watch the movie, it feels like it's realistic to a certain degree, because the conspiracy side of me wants to believe that there are ghosts. And so when I watch these kind of movies, they at least impact you in a certain way. Like it's not all crazy monsters, right? It might actually be real. So there is this movie that I wanted to talk about, which is Hereditary, right? I heard that this movie is scary, and I also heard that this movie is boring, right? There are two sides. Like every time there's a good movie, there's going to be a side where people says it's overrated. So I had to watch it for myself and bring a conclusion to myself whether it's good or bad. So I did watch the movie, and the movie kept going and progressing, and it was just typical. It was that, they're building up character. It's this family it's a family, and they lost a grandmother, right? The family loses someone special and someone very secretive. Used to do she's the grandmother of the guy, and she was doing a lot of spiritual stuff. And the daughter, the youngest daughter in the family, sort of had a connection with the grandmother, and they were doing something fishy, right? Something to do with devil and ghost and this. It was this, I forgot the name of this demon, but it was some sort of a demon that they were worshipping. And it was scary. I didn't know what to expect, but that last 30 minutes of this movie is very, very scary. Now, let me tell you why it's actually scary, right? It's not the jump scares. It's not any effects that they put into your face, or any flashing lights that scare you. No. What this movie does in that last 30 minutes is the most creative thing I've ever seen in horror, right? It does things that are so different from typical horror movies that it made me go wow, and it genuinely scared me. Because the mother in this movie is like the main character, and her acting, obviously her acting is amazing. I don't know why I haven't seen her in other movies, but she did a great role in this movie. And like she's like this typical mother in the start, right, trying to figure out what's going on in her family and just be normal. But by the end of the movie, she is the monster. She gets overtaken by the ghost, and when she becomes that being, that ghostly being, it is so terrifying to watch her. Like the actions that she does and the way they execute each of these scare scenes are just so creative. And I just enjoyed the movie. That last 30 minutes was genuinely scary, and that's what you want from a horror movie, to genuinely be amazed and scared at the same time, all right? And you want that sort of a picture in your brain that haunts you for the next few days. And that's what Hereditary did for me. It's very hard to say that word, but that movie is just something special, right? After Conjuring, I didn't think any movie would be that scary, but it is a scary movie, and it's done right. There are sort of camera angles, sort of choreographies in this movie that are creative. I haven't seen stuff like this in Hollywood. Like there's literally a scene where he looks at the entire house, which is dark, and it doesn't see anyone, but she's sort of hiding in the shadow, and she just randomly starts running towards him, and he runs away. Like you can see a chase sequence, right? And you can see her following him. Usually in horror movies, you see the ghost sort of follows you, but you don't see the ghost following. You just see the guy or protagonist running away, and you just pretend, okay, the ghost is behind him, and then the ghost disappears. But here, you can literally see the ghost following you right behind. Like it's so scary. She follows him until he sort of reaches the attic and closes the door, and then she becomes a full demon mode and starts banging her head into the ceiling. It's scary, okay? And whoever directed this is a genius, and I hope to see horror movies sort of evolve this way. Use choreography that is new and unique, and just the sound and story. Obviously, all these come into play, but I think what Hereditary does is unique and special, and will always be one of my scariest movies I've ever seen, no matter what other people say. It's creative, it's fun, it's scary, and that last 30 minutes is great. It pays off. It's not like, oh, we have hours of development and the end sucks, right? No, the hours of development sort of pays off in the end, and I appreciate that about this movie. And yeah, Hereditary is a good movie.